Hi, everybody. It's Becky Whetstone, the Marriage Crisis Manager. And I was wanting to kind of have a class teaching everyone what I learned when I was doing my dissertation research back in 2005. It was really hard to find a topic to do research on for the dissertation because while I may want to solve all the problems of the world and you're focusing on a dissertation, the only way you'll ever get it done is by looking at one little slice of the pie. And so I was so interested and always have been since I went through my own divorce in 93, just completely fascinated with the subject of divorce and how a person can go from up here of I really, really, really want to marry you, I love you so much, to I don't want to be around you anymore ever again. I wanted to study what happened in this little segment right here that took the person from here to here. And so that was a slice of pie that was doable to understand how someone goes from I really want to be married to you to I really don't want to be married to you. I think there's a lot of important information I learned in that will be helpful to you. So I interviewed 11 participants for my research. And I spoke to each of them for 2 hours and asked them all the same questions. And then organically asked them other questions as, based on whatever their story was. And so when you're doing research, what you're looking for, and this is called qualitative research, which basically is you are interviewing people and looking for patterns in the group to see you know, if you can identify maybe all 11 people haven't gone through these patterns. And so I interview everybody. I transcribe all the interviews. And this, by the way, is when you had to like listen to headphones and type it out. There was no dictation that was reliable back then that would type it out for me. So this took a long, long time to transcribe. 22 hours of interviews, but I started to notice a pattern for each one of the participants. When I asked them, first of all, this is, if you're going to ask somebody why they decided to get divorced, you're going to have to ask them why did they decide to get married. And although this didn't end up being a major one of the points in how they decided to divorce, what I learned in how they decided to marry was that almost all 11 of these participants married for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine and knew that they were probably not being super wise at the time. And I relate to this because, back in when I was in my 20s and I had my what they call the starter marriage back then. I had that experience of walking down the aisle thinking, I don't want to do this. Please get someone save me. I don't want to marry this person. And I literally was of the mind that how long do I have to wait before I get a respectable period of time before I can get a divorce? So, yeah, all 11 of these participants married for completely ridiculous reasons, like, I wanted regular sex, or one of them said something like, uh, I was moving out of town for my education, and it's like, well, do I take her or do I not? And if I take her back, in many decades ago, a lot of parents would raise holy hell if you were going to take their daughter to another town and live with her. And so some of these people felt pressure, cultural pressure to marry, to satisfy parents and cultural or religious beliefs. So that was the first thing is, not a solid marriage decision in the first place. And the one that shocked me the most of all was the person thought that Y2K, which was when it was going to go from 1999 to the year 2000. Those of us that were adults back then, there was a lot of fear mongering in the press about, when the clocks switch over to this new millennium, the computers aren't programmed correctly, and we might end up having a catastrophic loss of electricity, financial information, all that kind of stuff. And so there were the Y2K people, which are probably similar to conspiracy theorists today, were worried about their survival, and they were stockpiling food and things that they thought they would need in case Y2K basically destroyed our system of functioning. And so this one woman had decided to marry her husband because he was a survivalist. He could live off the land for months at a time. And so, when you're, and then of course Y2K comes and it was a nothing burger, right? I mean, everything, the banks and everything, continued to function as they always had. And there had really been nothing to be afraid of all along. But, now this woman had been married to a man that she married simply because he could help her survive if all hell had broken loose during Y2K. So, I have a real thing because of these interviews and the reading I've done about the subject about how people choose mates. I have a real beef with how little research and thought people put into choosing a person who they're going to spend the rest of their lives with and raise children with. Okay, so once they are in these marriages, that, ultimately they may not really feel great romantic love for these people. They may like them okay. They may not be very sexually attracted to them, whatever. So you can kind of see from the start where they've set themselves up for failure. And so pretty soon into the marriage, they're going to have an awareness of, uh-oh, I think I'm unhappy. And that's the first theme that I found in my dissertation research was, uh-oh, I think I'm unhappy. That's stage one of a deteriorating marriage. And it is called disillusionment. And disillusionment insinuates that you came in and you were okay up here, and all of a sudden you drop to being disillusioned with the relationship. Okay. And typically these people say to themselves, well, I know marriages have ups and downs, and so I'll just see how it goes and maybe things will get better. But they don't get better, probably because this couple wasn't even compatible or should have gotten married in the first place. And then they go down to stage two, which is they go, oh my God, my feelings about being unhappy in this marriage are serious and they're not going away. This could lead to divorce, but immediately tell themselves, no way am I getting a divorce. And then they tell themselves all the many reasons why they don't want to get a divorce, whether it's religion, in hurting the children, what people will think, or, many hundreds of reasons. So now they're in stage two, very disillusioned, but trying to cope. And pretty soon they drop down to another theme that I found in my dissertation research. And this one is called detachment. So you go from disillusionment and then erosion. I'm seriously unhappy, but I'm not getting a divorce. And then detachment, where you're going like, I'm really thinking about how unhappy I am more and more and more. And I am just going to have to start doing something away from the marriage that brings me some sort of happiness. So this could mean the person is going to go back to school, they're going to have an affair, they're going to start a workout program, they're going to join a women's or men's group and get involved in that. There's all sorts of ways people have this coping mechanism away from their spouse, and they're thinking that that's going to be their winning plan that will help them stay married and avoid a divorce. But what they don't know is that once they enter into the detachment stage, their unhappiness is going to increase and their ability to tolerate it is going to decrease. And so they're headed toward a cliff and they don't even realize it. And so one day, and we can't predict when or what's going to happen or how big or small an event it's going to be, but one day the spouse they're unhappy with says or does something or doesn't say or do something. And in that moment, they're like, oh my God, I can't be married to someone who would do what that person just did. So in that moment is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And once that is reached, the person gets clarity that they will either have to repair the marriage or they will have to probably get a divorce. So the fifth stage that I identified in my research is what I call death of the marriage. And when people read this, they often misinterpret what I mean by death of the marriage. I mean death of how the marriage was. That person will never go back to the status quo and the way things were. Things will have to be drastically different, or they will probably get a divorce. So these are some of the things that I think are so important for people to know and understand. And you could be in the marital deterioration process and not even know it. And I want people to become familiar with this, like they become familiar with the stages of cancer. So you can go, oh, I'm in stage 2, which is erosion. I'm seriously unhappy. That's when you should go to marriage therapy. That is when you need to reach out to your partner and tell them that you're seriously struggling in the marriage. Of my 11 participants, I don't think any of them, once they entered the process of deterioration, told their spouse that they were struggling. It was totally a secret and an internal journey. And so I'm wanting that to stop. I'm wanting people to communicate about their unhappiness and give their spouse a chance to adjust or make it right before there's so much resentment built up that it's really difficult to overcome. Okay, so that is what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, was how marriages die and how people decide to divorce. They go through stages, and I want you to be familiar with the stages. I sure hope this helps you, and stay tuned. I will be presenting some more interesting information that couples can use to hopefully fend off marriage crisis. Hi, everybody.